Well, good morning and welcome to Stonehill. I love that video just there where she just slaps him. Anybody else love that? Nobody, okay. Emily and Isaac, yeah, that hurt actually when she did that? Yeah, it did, okay. Well, welcome to Stonehill Church this morning. We're so glad you're here. This service is packed, last service was packed, and God is doing some amazing things. So if this is your first time, we want to welcome you. We want to welcome everybody here, welcome everybody watching online. It's just a really great day to be here together. Our community groups are starting up this week. And whether it's financial peace or it's the community groups, it's their starting point started already this morning. And I just wanted to, maybe before we got too far into the service, just pray. It's a big deal at our church, our community groups. And so for everyone that's part of one, or maybe you haven't signed up for one, it's still not too late. You can do that this morning, and we'll get you plugged into one. But it's a big deal. And I just really want to pray and ask God to be part of the next 7 weeks as we go through this next part of this semester. So let's do that right now. God, just thank you so much. We just lift up our community groups. Lord, we know that there's so much power when it comes to relationships plus intentionality towards you. And so that's what we're asking for in this semester, this rest of the 7 weeks as it's going on, that God, you would be in the entirety of the groups. That, Lord, I pray that walls would be dropped, that we would be real, that we would share our experiences, but we would allow your word to transform us. And so that's what I pray. God, I pray for just a great start. I pray for commitment this 7 weeks and just to see you work in amazing ways, and we love you in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, we're excited about that. We're also really thrilled about our new series called Love and War. I had fun last week. I don't know if you had fun, but I had fun as we started about talking about the rules of engagement when it comes to our relationships and our marriages. And next week, you got to come back because we're talking about the thrill of the pursuit, how to have fun in marriage. And some of us, we probably need that. We need some fun. We need some spice, and so I would encourage you to come back next week. But today, we're going to talk about this idea of how to fight fair. How to fight fair. So this is what I need you to do before we get too far into this. This is really important, okay? I need everybody to take your arms and your fists like this, okay? Hit them up. Come on now. Got some crowd participation up in here, all right? Put your elbows like right there and leave them locked there the whole time so you don't elbow your spouse or your friend next to you, okay? That's like the rule because it could get a little feisty here in a second, all right? Starting with this. All right, guys, I'm going to start with you this morning. Hope you're okay with this. I have a verse to read as we get going. All right, this verse is actually in the Bible. It's found in Proverbs chapter 27:15, and I need some participation with this, guys. It says this: a quarrelsome wife is like the dripping of a leaky roof in a rainstorm. Can I get an amen or something for that, guys? Okay. Quarrelsome wife is like drip, drip, drip. All right, ladies, I want to give you some love too, okay? Don't feel left out. This verse is this one. Better to have a severe migraine than to live with a husband that is a jerk. Come on now. That one's found in 2 Doug chapter 4, verse 2. Just if you're wondering, that's actually not in the Bible, but I think it still applies for us. How many of you guys have ever, let's just be honest, how many of you have ever thought about something silly and insignificant before? Let's just see your hand. Come on, if you're not raising your hand, you're lying. You're a liar in church, okay? I would raise your hand, ask you this question to raise your hand, but I'm not going to do that. How many of you thought about something silly and insignificant on the way to church this morning? Okay, all right. There you go. Some of you are honest. That's good. So this week on Facebook, we asked this question, tell us your silly fights. Tell us something that your silly fights, hashtag silly fights. And so you guys are awesome. If you've never been on our Facebook page, make sure to like it because we got a lot of information that comes out. But you guys did some really cool stuff and gave us some silly fights. Here's one. This is what one person said. He said that he and his wife fought on whether or not she had ever been to the restaurant Great Harvest that's here in Boise, Idaho, okay? That was their fight, all right? But this is what he said. He said, I thought she had been there, and for 6 months I stood my ground saying she had been there, but realized after 4 months, I had actually gone with my coworker. But I kept strong for 2 more months before I came clean. Yeah. Be strong, guys. Don't give in. All right, hashtag silly fights. Another couple said that they had a silly fight over whether Kraft macaroni cheese was better or Velveeta macaroni and cheese, which is totally silly because everybody knows that Velveeta macaroni and cheese is way, way better. Okay, maybe not. All right, here's the other one. A couple actually got in a fight whether Bigfoot was real or not, okay? which is ridiculous because everybody knows Bigfoot is real, okay? We live in the Northwest, and anyways, I've seen the beef jerky commercials, and I know it's real. One of the worst fights that my wife and I, Heather, ever got in was our first year of marriage, and we were in college, and we lived in this little one-room apartment. It was like 300 square feet, where the bed was like this far away from the kitchen table, and we ate like ramen noodles all the time. You guys ever been there before? And so this is our first year of marriage in school, and there was no like closed rooms in this apartment except for the bathroom. Okay, so one night, I'm hanging out at our apartment with my guy friends, my boys. We're hanging out. We're playing some Tecmo Bowl. You remember Tecmo Bowl? Okay, so we're playing this, and all of a sudden, Heather comes home from all day at school and at work, and so she comes home about 8 o'clock at night, and she's super tired, okay? So she walks in, and when she walks in, first of all, she gives me the eye. You know what I'm talking about? Guys, you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, so she gives me this eye, and then she makes a statement. She's like, Doug, she's like, I need to study, and I need to have some quiet. To which I said this. I said, hey, babe, would it be all right if you would go into the bathroom and sit on the toilet and do the homework so me and the guys can still hang out? Oh, boy. Doug. Here's the sad thing is she actually did that. Oh, whatever. Take her side. And this big fight erupted, and it was huge. It was crazy. And I look back at my first few years of marriage, and I was just an idiot. I was so mature and selfish, and I guarantee there were times where Heather was like, I don't know if we're going to make it. I don't know if this is going to work out. I feel like we fought a lot. So if you're here today, and maybe you're in a relationship, a dating relationship, or a marriage relationship, you've been married just for a few years, and you feel like you fight a lot, guess what? Welcome to the Fight Club, okay? First of all, if you've been married for a long, long time and you still lock horns in aisle 6 at Walmart, okay? Welcome to normalcy, because that's what we do. In relationships, we fight. We have conflict. It's natural. It's normal oftentimes. And the question isn't this, is if we fight. The question really is, how do we fight? How do we fight? Here's kind of the big thought, the big statement, if you're taking notes this morning, is this. Unhealthy couples, they fight for victory, but healthy couples fight for resolution. Let me say that again. Unhealthy couples fight for victory. They want to win at all costs. They want to be right. But healthy couples, they fight for resolution. They want their marriage to win. So that's what we're talking about this today. We fight, but it's not if, it's how we fight. I think before we get too far into it today, we need to figure out, where does fighting even come from? Like, where does it start? And James talks about it in James chapter 4 as we kind of begin this passage. It says this. He says, what causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? The reality is that our fights, they come from within when we're selfish, when we're focused on ourselves, when we don't get what we want, when things don't go the way we want them to go. I want to sleep in this morning. Let me sleep in. I don't want to do housework. I want to go shopping. I want to hang out with my friends. I want a new car. And when we don't get these things and somebody, our spouse or our friend or our parent, is standing in our way, conflict and fights begin to break out. And they begin to happen. And you take that, the selfishness and our desires to have what we want when we want it, and you add the fact that we are different. I don't know if you know this, but men and women, we're different. Like, guys, you get that? Men, women are different. Maybe you need a grunt here. Grunt or something if you're agreeing with me, okay? Women, men are different. Am I right? God says this in Genesis chapter 1, that male was created and the female was created, and that's a great thing. We were created equal value and equal worth, but the truth is we're different. And so when you take the differences, our personality differences, the gender differences, our backgrounds, and then you mix it all together with our selfishness, all of a sudden we begin to see conflict take place, and we see fighting take place and arguments. And the question is, what do we do? How do we handle this in a godly, biblical manner? So I'm going to give you some rules. We're going to talk about some rules, but we're going to pick up, first of all, James chapter 1, verse 19. If you guys want to turn there this morning, we're going to look at two specific verses, and then we're going to break these verses down through our points. But James chapter 1, verse 19, and he talks about what we need to do when it comes to our conflict, when it comes to our relationships with whoever we might be in relationship with. Here we go, James chapter 1, verse 19, and this is what he says. James is the brother of Jesus. He says, my dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Basically, this is super important. Pay attention. Everyone, you, me, your spouse, your parent, your child, everyone should be quick to listen, should be slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires. Again, it's not about if we fight, it's about how we fight. And in our marriages, in our relationships, we are going to fight, but the question is, are we going to fight for our relationships, or are we going to fight against our relationships? So here we go. You guys ready for some fight rules? You ready? Here's the first one. The first fight rule is this. In our fights, we have to listen to understand. Listen to understand. It says everyone should be quick to listen. Oh my goodness, this is the hardest one for me because my wife, Heather, will be telling me some things that she's struggling with, like problems. Maybe something happened with the kids or something happened with me, and it doesn't even always have to be with me, but some kind of problems, and before she's even done, I'm already trying to figure out how to fix her problem, and that frustrates her so much. Am I the only guy that does that? Any other guys? A lot of the wives are shaking their head right now. Okay. We do that, guys, sometimes, because we want to fix things, but we don't try to stop and try to figure out what they're saying. Proverbs 18:2 says this, fools find no pleasure in understanding, but they delight in their own opinions. Ouch. It's key for us to stop, to listen, not just listen, to understand what our friend, what our partner is saying, what our spouse is saying. To have that understanding. About 14 years ago, my wife and I, we lived in Ohio at the time, and it was our anniversary coming up, and I, as a husband, wanted to do something special for my wife and just like treat her right. We just had adopted 3 kids at one time, and we were about 9 months into this, and it just had been really hard and difficult and stressful, but awesome at the same time. But I just we need to celebrate. We haven't had any time together, so I had this plan to take her to Amish country there and go to like a bed and breakfast and just kind of this romantic getaway, and so I began to plan and prepare for it. I had enough sense, though, before I scheduled anything to go up to her and make sure that the date was appropriate, like to make sure I didn't want to do all these plans and then figure out it wouldn't work out. So I go up to her and say, Heather, I want to do something for you. It's a surprise, but I want to make sure that these dates are okay. And Heather's like, Doug, that's so thoughtful. Thank you. You are the most amazing husband, the best-looking husband. She didn't say all that. Okay, anyways, she goes on and she says, that's awesome, but the problem with that is Trevor, who was our oldest son, and he's 6 years old at the time, he was going to have his tonsils taken out. And so if we left, it would have been like a day or two after he had his tonsils taken out, so we wouldn't be there to help him recover. And she said, I just don't think that would be a good time. I didn't hear a no, okay? And so I was like, okay, what's a big deal about tonsils? Like, how big hard is that? Give him a popsicle, and he's great. He's good to go, Shove that popsicle up his throat, he's great, So I'm just a great dad at this time, okay? So I go ahead and I make the reservations. I pay for everything. And I'm thinking, I'm going to be the best husband in the world. And so I walk up to Heather and I say, guess what? I'm going to surprise her. Guess what, Heather? I know this is all happening, but we're going to go to Amish country for the weekend. Woohoo! And I got that look again, And she was flaming mad. I'm talking about mad. And guys, we know this. When mama ain't happy, ain't what? Nobody happy. And it blew up. And it all started from me what? Not listening and not understanding. Not really listening to her heart and what she wanted and what she needed. I just cared about what I wanted and really what was best for me. Some great advice I've learned from counseling training is this, that if you're in an argument, a conversation, a conflict, it's always good to repeat back what you just heard, what they just said. What your spouse just said keeps the issue focused at hand, first of all. Make sure that we're dealing with what is the problem, and then you begin to ask questions for clarifications. So what you're saying is this. You're saying no, right? I mean, if I would have done that, that would have helped out. Guys, this is so huge for us. Even though we might be upset, we need to repeat back to them what we just heard. Number one, for clarification. Also to make sure that we're tracking together, but also on top of that, gives them validation. It validates what they had just said, and we let them know that we care about them, that we understand where they're coming from, to make sure that we hear them. Wow. So we know this stuff. This isn't like rocket science, but if we do this, it begins to make all the difference in the world when it comes to our marriages and our relationships. Here's the second thing. So first of all, we listen to understand. The second thing is we speak to strengthen. We speak to strengthen. The verse goes on and says, be slow to speak. Why? Because words are so important, aren't they? They are so powerful. The old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never harm me, is the biggest load of crock in the world, isn't it? Because they do hurt and they can harm us. Proverbs chapter 21:23 says this, watch your tongue and keep your mouth shut. Some of us just need to hear that one right there. And you will stay out of trouble. Now, this is a great verse. Not a great verse to quote during a fight, FYI, okay? But in a fight, it's great to stop and think through what we're about ready to say. To turn that filter on, and when we turn that filter on, there's two great questions that we need to ask ourselves when we're in a conversation, we're in a conflict, we're in a fight, an argument. The first question we need to ask is this: should it be said? Should it be said? You're in an argument, emotions are boiling up. Guys, for instance, it's probably not wise to say something like this to your wife. You seem very emotional. Is it that time of the month? I might have known a guy who said that one time in his marriage, okay? Not good. We got to watch what we say. Should it be said at all? Second thing is, should it be said now? Should it be said now? You see, there are certain things that need to be said, but not in a fight. There's certain things that we need to say to our spouses and our friends and our parents, but not during times of conflict. What we need to do with those things is during a time that's not conflict, when we're doing well and there's momentum, we pull our spouse aside without the kids, and we begin to tell them all the things that, or several things that they're doing good. Give them 5 things. Say, man, I appreciate you, honey, because you do this, and you do this, and you do this. I don't know if you've ever heard the statement of reward what you want repeated. If your spouse is doing something great, let them know. If your child is doing something amazing, let them know. Reward what you want repeated. And after you do that, after you have some positive momentum in that conversation, then that's when you say, hey, look, there's one thing I need to talk to you about. I'm struggling with this in this area, and help me have some understanding from your perspective. Why do you do this? Or why do you say this when I do this? And you have positive momentum going, but don't do it during a fight. Doing at intentional and purposeful times will make all of the difference. The truth is this: regardless of what we do, how great we handle conversations, we're still going to get in fights. We're still going to have arguments. And so if you're in a dating relationship, if you're planning on dating someone at some point, if you're married, no matter where you're at, there are certain things that you should never say or never do. These are things that I try to live by. I'm not perfect at them, but I want to give you a few things to never say or do. First of all, in a conversation, a conflict, never call names. Never call names, unless it's like a special name like Pookie or something like that. Don't do it. Actually, don't do that either. That one's a lame one, all right? Number 2, never raise your voice. Never raise your voice. That's hard because you get emotional and you want to raise. Some of you are just yellers. That's your spiritual gift, is yelling. And so sometimes it's just best to cool down and calm down and take a breather, pray, sing a song, maybe step aside for a moment. Number 3, never get historical. Never get historical. You say, are you talking about hysterical? No, historical. Don't get hysterical. But don't take things that have happened in the past, in the conversation that you're having right now, and start piling it up. Like some of the things you've already dealt with, leave them alone. And even if you haven't dealt with them, that's not the time to deal with them. Stick to the issue at hand. Never get historical. Number 4, never say never or always. Justin Bieber even knows that, right? You know what I'm saying? Never say never. You're like, we do that. You always do that. You never do this. No, we need to change that wording to, often or sometimes or rarely. It makes a difference. Number 5, I'm seeing some elbows hitting right now, okay? Number 5, this is a really important one. Never threaten divorce. Never threaten divorce. Don't even use the D word. Now, some of you are divorced in here, and so we don't want to throw guilt on you. God forgives, and hope and healing can come from all of that, so that's awesome. But if you're in a marriage, if in a conflict, if you're dating someone, planning to get married, just know that that's not a word that you should even use. It's a low blow. You fight for that marriage, and you never give up. 6, never quote the Bible to prove your point, okay? That's funny for you guys because some of you have done that before, okay? Or someone's spoken and you say, well, Doug said, don't do that either. That's not good. There's a pastor, a husband, said one time that he was arguing with his wife and he was quoting the Bible. This is an actual verse. He said this verse in Proverbs. He says, it's better to live in a corner of the roof in a house than with a contentious woman. The wife was like, fine, we'll get up there then, okay? We can't do that. All the ladies were like, yeah. You see, we got to speak to strengthen. We have to listen to understand. We got to speak to strengthen. Watch our words. They're powerful. And then finally, we have to fight to resolve. We have to fight to resolve. It says slow to anger, slow to become angry. And the truth is this, in your marriage, in your relationship, regardless of what type of relationship it is, sometimes we just have to let certain things go. If there are things that we always pick up on our spouse or our loved ones, and we just keep on picking at it, we will never have a strong marriage or never have a strong relationship with anyone. You have to let things go, and sometimes just be slow to getting angry. Be slow to anger. Have grace in our relationships. This is a really important verse out of Ephesians chapter 4. Paul's talking about anger, and this is what he says when it comes to angry, and this is true for any relationship. In anger, do not sin. Okay? So basically what he's saying is like, when you're angry, there is a good anger, a righteous anger, and there is a not righteous anger, an unholy anger. Like when we see someone that is being misused or being mistreated or abused, there can be something within us that comes up that can be a righteous anger. The truth is that most of us, that's not the anger that we usually struggle with. He says, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you are still angry. And do not give the devil a foothold. Do not give devil a foothold. Here's a life-changing principle for our marriages. And I think if we could just get this one, I think this would be huge. Don't go to bed with unresolved anger in your marriage. Don't do it. Why? Paul just said it. Because when we do that, it gives the devil a foothold into our relationship. And that little problem that you had before begins to grow up into a bigger problem. You say, you don't understand my husband. He has the gift of being a jerk. It doesn't matter. When we have these problems and issues, this unresolved anger, and we go to bed at night or we go to bed in the evening and we don't deal with it, and what happens is we wake up the next morning and it begins to snowball and it becomes worse. I can think of certain issues in my own life where my wife and I, we struggled for several days or for months, and it can track it all the way back to just one conversation and one argument that we had that we never dealt with, and it just snowballed and got worse and worse and worse. And we cracked the door open for the devil, for Satan. It's huge. Craig Rochelle, he's a pastor, and he talks about married couples when they go to bed with unresolved anger, that they assume the fighting position. You guys know what I'm talking about? Where the husband, he sits on this side facing this way, and the wife faces this way. You guys are laughing because you already know what I'm talking about. And there's like this great divide in the middle of the bed, okay? And nothing can touch. You can't touch a toe. You can't touch a foot. And if you touch, everything breaks out. You know what I'm saying? So in that fighting position, you usually have a silent fighter and you have a huffer, okay? So like in my marriage, my wife is a silent fighter. She doesn't even give me the satisfaction of knowing she's still alive, okay? For me, I'm the huffer. And I'm like pulling the sheets. She's got to hear me, and she's got to know that I'm mad. You know, we do that a lot, don't we? How many of you guys are the silent fighters? Okay, how many of you are the huffers? All right. So we do that. If we just would not go to bed with unresolved anger. Now, let me give you a little caveat with this, okay? Sometimes it's good, it's important for us to separate for a time to cool off, okay? Separate, don't let our emotions get the best of us. Proverbs 29:11 says, fools give vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end. You may need to separate to cool down for a time, but it's really important. Don't disengage, and don't say I'm done. You need to separate for a time, separate, but at all costs, if you can, begin to work on it. Begin to make progress before you go to bed. Sit down, pray with one another. Do something so you do not give the devil a foothold in your relationship. Now, some of you, when you talk about marriages, we talk about relationships. It could be a relationship with your parent, it could be a relationship with your child, it could be a friend, it could be whatever. Some of you are in a good spot right now in those relationships. You're in a great spot. So you hear this stuff and that's good, but I'm really in a good spot. Well, here's what I'm going to say to you. It's not something you can put on coast. You have to keep on working at it. Keep on fighting. You can't put it in neutral because when you do, that's when the problems come. And problems come even when you're working at it. And so you have to keep on working at it. And sometimes we just need a tune-up. The other truth is there are people here right now that your marriage is struggling. You're struggling right now. And I'm speaking to you, and you know that. You know that you're struggling in your marriage right now. And you say, well, how do I know when it's bad? Or how do I know if I'm struggling? And there's this doctor. His name is Dr. Gottman. And he gives us the 4 horsemen of the relationship apocalypse. Basically, 4 different things that if these things are happening in your marriage or in your relationships anywhere, you know that you're struggling and you know you need help. And so I just want to list them out real quick. The first one is this. It's criticizing. Criticizing. See, there's a difference between criticizing and complaining or talking through. If you have this ongoing critical spirit where there's always something wrong with your spouse, there's always something wrong and you're always picking at them, that's a sign. Here's the second one, contempt. Contempt, this is more of disgust, eye-rolling and sarcasm. You don't even like to be around that person. You're passive-aggressive. Must be nice to come home and watch the ball game all night. Or, must be nice to go out with your friends all night. That's that idea of being passive-aggressive. Here's a third one, is defensiveness. They're always the problem. Yeah, I do a little bit, sure. I'm a little bit at fault because I'm not perfect. I know that, but it's them, really. If they would change their ways, we would be okay. Fourthly, it's stonewalling. Stonewalling. Dr. Gottman says this is one of the most dangerous ones. That when you, as the husband or the wife, either one, or the friend, when you just don't even want to deal with the conflict, you just want to walk away from it and not engage, not try to find resolution. And Dr. Gottman says that if this happens quite frequently in a marriage or relationship, that usually that marriage will end up in a divorce because you're not working through those issues. And there are several of you, I know this, in a group this size, your marriage is struggling. Your relationships are struggling, and you need some help. And here's what I would say. First of all, fight. Fight for that relationship. Don't give up. That's what Satan wants you to do. Don't give up. Fight for what God has given you, and get some help. Some of you maybe need to go to a Christian counselor who gives you godly advice, and you need to begin to work through your marriage, and there's no shame in that. We all probably need that at some point in our marriage, and some of you need to do that. Guys, don't be afraid to do that. Don't be afraid to break the walls down and make your marriage what it needs to be. Women, don't be afraid to go get some help. Maybe you need some help, and we would love to help you. We have some great counselors that we work with that we can refer you to that can help you work through those issues, to get through them so your marriage, your relationship with your kids, your relationship with your parents can be what it needs to be. But you got to fight. You got to do something. You can't just keep on doing what you are doing. You got to fight. You see, conflict and fighting often comes down to one thing: control. We talked about this. James talked about this. These desires from within. We want it, and we want it now. And it feels good when we are in control and we get what we want. Just to be transparent, I could sit here for hours telling you stupid stories of how I've screwed up in my marriage over the years. I think about literally, I have plenty of content on this one, okay? At the very beginning of my marriage, I was so immature, and I was so selfish, thinking about myself, and just God blessed me with an angel of a wife who just gave me grace upon grace upon grace. And it's only by the grace of God that we are still married to today. And it's awesome because in a couple months we're celebrating our 20th anniversary, and I'm just so thankful. Yeah, that's God right there. And this week, it's been a fun series for me. At the same time, it's one of those things where you know what's right. You're like, oh, and it's hitting myself right in the heart as I'm talking about this. And I began to ponder, because I don't want to ever be hypocritical where I say, do this, and then my marriage is falling apart. And God began to convict me of certain things, and He kind of gave me this thought. And I just thought about the remote control. You guys, how many of you guys in your house, who's the one that holds this remote most of the time? Just be honest. Come on. How many of you guys? Come on. Now, some of you guys, girls. Okay. All right. I usually hold the remote in my family as God has ordained it. Okay. And every once in a while, my wife doesn't even really watch TV, so it's pretty easy for me. She'll be sitting there on her little blog, and I'll be watching TV or something. And every once in a while, she will say, "Hey, Doug, can we watch this show, or can we turn the channel?" I might be interested, but honestly, I don't want to change it because she asked me to do, and I want to be the one in control, and she's challenging my authority. Okay, I have the control. I want the control. I earned the control, okay? And it ticks me off because I don't want to give it up. Now, as I'm a little silliness about this, but at the heart of it, there's some truth to that. And I began to think about this little plastic thing here. And I thought about this, Doug, what if your wife wanted the remote control all the time? Would you be willing to give this remote control to her? Would you be willing to give it up? Oh my God, send me to the mission field, but don't make me do this, Thank you. Sympathy right there. I know, it wasn't a great joke. Thanks. And I began to think about it. And maybe for you, it's not the remote. Maybe it's your thermostat at your house. Maybe it's your covers at bed at night. Maybe it's your free time. Maybe it's your friendship. Maybe it's what your spouse desires you to do, help with the housework or help with the kids or to be present at home. And it really comes down to more of a heart issue for all of us. Are we willing to give up that control? And as I began to think about this thought, it really kind of resonated with me to what the verse we used last week, Ephesians chapter 5. And Paul says this. I think it's really very practical and applicable for us today. He said, husbands, speaking to the husbands, but it's really for both husbands and wives. Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church, and He gave Himself up for her. Listen, Jesus gave everything up for you and I, His life, his desires, his passion. He gave everything up for you and I because he loved us so much. And the question is for us, in our relationships, in our marriage, are we willing to give up some of our desires? Are we willing to give up some of our wants and the things that we want to have for the people that God has placed in our life? For our husbands, for our wives, for our friends, for our parents, for our kids. See, the truth is this: we're going to fight. How are we going to fight? The truth is we're going to battle. We are in a war, love and war. We're going to battle, but are you going to battle for your spouse, for your friends, for your relationships, or are you going to battle against them? The question is really simple. Are we willing to give up that control as Christ gave up his control, gave up his life for us, for the ones he loved? And that's really the question for us today. Are we willing to give up those things for the ones that we love? So we got a little more homework for this week, okay? You guys ready? He's excited for it. I can tell you're excited about homework, okay? Last week we asked you to answer a couple questions. Here's a couple things that we want you to do this week, the homework. Get together with your spouse, or it could be your friend, or it could be your parent or your child, when you're not in a conflict, when things are going decently well, and I want you to get together with them and mutually do this together, okay? You tell them about 5 things that you are grateful and thankful for, okay? You're thankful for what they do in this area, thankful for this. You're so blessed that they do this. Reward what you want repeated, and then when you get done, give them one thing that you think they can improve on, one thing that would help them out, and do it in the right way. Be intentional about it. Think through your wording, because the words are important, and begin to filter what you're going to say to them to help build your relationship stronger. I don't care if you've been married for a year or for 50 years, or if you're dating someone, or if it's your parents. If we all do this, can you imagine if we would just all do this and we begin to really put the relationships that God has right in front of us, we give them priority? I think God will begin to move in amazing and wonderful ways in your own life, and you'll begin to see a huge difference. Begin to fight fair, okay? Let's pray. God, we're so grateful for all you've done. We love you so much, and this morning, I know it's very practical, but the truth is, Lord, we all need this. We all need to be reminded, or we need to be taught this, these biblical principles of being quick to listen, slow to speak, and be slow to have anger. And when we do this, God, in our conflicts and in our relationships, what a difference it will make. And when we do this, God, what a difference it will make in our families, in our church, in our community. So, God, we ask for this, God. Melt our hearts. Lord, help us to look inward first before we look to the next person, that you would change us. And then, God, I believe you'll begin to change those around us. And so thank you for all you've done. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.